out. Oftentimes I think, oh yes, I'm made of sugar, I can't go out, but no, today I had to be made of finer stuff. Anyway, today's theme is new unwritten rules, and we've got quite a selection of interpretations. Even people who didn't even think they were going to read today are like, well, you showed up, so I expect you to read. Our first one actually knew she was coming. Great, because I gave her so many mean teacher looks last month, and she just came to be an audience member, and it didn't work, but it did for this month. So please welcome Donna, Dechen, Birdwell.
Yeah!
She's going to be reading, I should say, a disruptor tell a futuristic dystopia.
So for those of you who are familiar with the Recall Chronicles series, I've published the first 2 volumes of the series so far. Volume 3 is coming up in October, and Volume 3 is, oh yeah, post-apocalyptic. So in a post-apocalyptic era, there's nothing but unwritten rules, because everything has changed. So my main character in this Volume 3 is a man by the name of Jonathan Swain. He's the brother of the main character in Volume 1, Jenda Swain. And he is traveling from where he was in New Mexico back to Jenda's apartment in Dallas. And he has no idea what he's going to find out there. So this is one episode along the way in his journey back to Dallas. Some miles outside Sweetwater, I glimpsed what looked like a casting tower, and I decided to see if the car's SoundNet receiver, oh, this is in the year 2126, by the way. I decided to see if the car's SoundNet receiver could pick up anything. It scanned through a couple of times before coming to rest on a pattern of static that morphed in and out of some music, guitars and drums, and a singer with a nasal, twangy delivery. Reception improved as I got closer, and I could see that the casting tower itself looked jury-rigged. Cables and big silver balloons and some other odd structures emerged from it at various levels and angles. Closer still, I saw that the tower was surrounded by a hodgepodge of cars and trucks and vans. There was a gate of sorts next to the roadway from which a flag flew. It resembled the Texas flag, but in shades of green and blue with a bright magenta star. This was irresistible. I had to stop and investigate. A gate tender met me with a huge smile and a welcome, hombre. He asked to see my ID, just so we know who's coming and going, you know, the tender remarked amiably. Does this place have a name? We call it Roverton, he said. He pointed me toward one of the vans where he promised I could get the best coffee this side of the Rio Grande. There were a couple of tables set up under an awning next to the van, which looked for all the world like photographs I'd seen of some old-time food trucks that used to ply the streets of places like Los Angeles, California, and Austin, Texas. What do you accept in payment? I asked, as I scanned the menu of drinks and food items listed on the screen beside the window. What y'all got to offer? Produce, services, electronic parts? I have some chitras from Amarillo. That'll do her. 1 unit of their chitras gets y'all coffee and an apple cruller. I examined the paper script I'd placed in my pocket to see what amounted to 1 unit. I laid it on the counter, and he offered me a cup of steaming coffee and a cruller still warm from the fryer drizzled in honey. The melancholy and ennui I'd experienced on the road began to dissipate. I sat at one of the tables, positioning myself to have a good view of this motley collection of vehicles and people. Roverton buzzed with activity. There was a woman sitting outside one of the vans operating an old-fashioned contraption for stitching cloth. A man laid out samples of fresh produce on a table next to a small truck. He had tomatoes and squash and a few cabbages. Another truck had cases of packaged foodstuffs, probably salvaged from a warehouse. Such items were destined to become increasingly scarce and eventually obsolete. One small truck had a 3D printer set up and displayed samples of the products it was scripted to make. An array of screens and other devices overflowed from yet another truck, while a boy argued with the seller about the repair of one of the devices. "You told me it was working, old man," the boy said. "Well, it is now," the seller replied with a sly grin. "Only because I fixed it. You owe me back at least a few chitras. Or how about you give me that transmitter over there that you're going to have to throw out because you nor anybody else knows how to make it work again?" "Sure," the seller shrugged. "Take it. Not worth anything to me. Now get on with you." The boy grabbed up the item in question and made his way to the table next to where I sat. He placed his newly acquired device on the table and pulled some tools out of a pocket of his very baggy trousers. I tried to imagine what else might be lurking in those immense pockets. The cafe operator shouted at him, "You, Gavin, either y'all buy something or you move along somewhere else for your tinkering." The boy muttered and began gathering up his materials. I turned toward the cafe operator. "He can sit with me. I'm buying him a coffee." I gave the lad a questioning look and he grinned, wordlessly accepting my offer. He laid his items on my table and went up to the window to accept the coffee the owner grudgingly shoved toward him. "It's not even full," he said. "Ain't paid for it yet." I held up another 1-unit chitra and the boy took it and gave it to the owner. "I think this entitles me one of those crullers too," he said. The owner sighed loudly as he finished filling the coffee cup and handed over a cruller wrapped in a torn piece of brown paper. "Don't ask for a plate, boy, because I know y'all would take it." By the time he got back to the table, the cruller was half gone. I held out my hand. "I'm Jonathan," I said, "Jonathan Swain. And you?" He held out the hand that didn't contain the cruller. "Gavin Marks," he mumbled through his mouthful of carbohydrates. We shook hands. "Do you think you can fix that?" I asked, looking at the transmitter. "Easy freezy," he said with a grin. "All it needs is to have this." And he launched into a technical explanation of the workings of the transmitter that I found impossible to follow. I decided he was either a mechanical genius or a master of persuasive wordsmithing. I nodded as if I understood. "What can you tell me about this place?" I asked. "Roverton?" He took a long draught of his coffee. "It's not a place exactly. We're just a moving convention of menders and players trying to survive." As I pressed him for more information, I gradually formed a picture of a community in flux, moving from place to place and matching up resources and services that one community needed with those another community could provide. "We camped here to fix the casting tower," he said. "It's working now, but not like it should." He kicked the leg of the table with the toe of a very worn boot. I got the feeling he thought he'd be able to make it work like it should. "Do you move with Roverton?" "Mostly," he said. "So where are you from?" "What kind of question is that for a colony-raised brat?" He gave me a sly look. "Where are you headed, Jonathan?" "Dallas." "Dallas." His face contracted into a frown as he stared into the bottom of his nearly empty coffee cup. "What business do you have there?" Now it was my turn to be evasive. "I'm just going to check on some things my sister left behind." "Any chance you'd be willing to take on a passenger?" "I've got some things I need to check on too." Remembering the coffee seller's hesitancy to offer Gavin a plate, I did a quick mental inventory of things I had in the car that I might actually miss if he stole them. There wasn't much. "Okay," I said. I put out my hand and we shook. "How old are you?" I asked. 15, or so I've been told. "And you?" "I'm 112. "So you did the Chulel then?" I nodded. "But I stopped about 20 years ago." "So that's what happened to your hair." He grinned. That protected you from the plague, though, right? That's what they say, I responded. I knew he was talking about the viral hemolytic anemia. It was the first time I'd heard it called plague, but I found it apt. So is it true that almost everybody who took Chulel regularly got the plague and died? He was staring over my shoulder. That's my understanding. Some people avoided it by isolating themselves, but that's pretty hard to do. I was thinking about my friend Sophia Poole, but also about Angeline and Leonard Fitzer in their fortified, sterile compounds. I took the last bite of my cruller and washed it down with a swallow of lukewarm coffee. How long will it take you to gather up your stuff? Gavin chuckled. You're looking at it, he said, gesturing at the newly acquired non-functioning transmitter and patting his oversized pockets. Let's go then.
All right, our next roulette is going to describe a redefining journey. Please welcome Hope Ruiz.